scaling modern farming technologies.
We were also able to be accredited to the Asian Pacific Coconut Community. This is
20 minutes for talk, 10 minutes for discussion, or whatever you prefer. Just let me know about your timings. I will show you then the signs of 5 minutes to the end of the talk, just to be to don't waste time of other speakers. So this is my pleasure to welcome at the stage two guys from Kenyatta University, Benath Shapaya and Clinton Kihima. Can I ask you guys to come? Yeah. The talk is already displayed. So the title is The Potential of Hybridity and Digitization of Film Festivals in the Appreciation of Film as Art. Guys, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you a lot. Thank you. Maybe you could have clapped for me afterwards. Yeah, because if you clap before, it puts a bit of pressure on me. This is Benath Shapaya, and of course this is Clinton Kihima. We are going to take not more than 15 minutes in this talk. The topic is the potential of hybridity and digitalization of film festivals in the appreciation of art, in the appreciation of film as art. Basically, when you talk about film and you go back to the history, even if you talk about film viewing, we have to start with Thomas Edison and, of course, Dixon, W.K.L. Dixon, who actually were the first people to come up with the film camera at that time. And they made a separate projection machine that was called a zetoscope. And this is one. This is how the machine looked like. It's quite an interesting machine because that time film could not roll for so many minutes. So it was, you pay a nickel. You go watch a film for just a short while, and then that was the end of your pleasure. You move on or you pay some more nickels. The theater they invented, or the commercial aspect in making a film, a commercial venture, because first of all you record, and then now you have to display, and then now you can recoup some of the costs that you spent. They made a theater called Nickelodeon. Basically, you go pay 1 nickel, you go position yourself in such a kind of machine, you watch for whatever, maybe 1, 2, 3 minutes, and then your nickel's done. But we find the Lumiere brothers who came up with the concept of having a theater, same to what we'll present when you go to a theater, when you go to cinema now, what you'll find. This is the concept that remained and took hold, instead of what we had with the Nickelodeon by Edison. Let me just go into a brief history of film festivals, because that is now the core point of this talk. But we shall still go back and see these two machines, or these two concepts by Edison and Lumiere. Why exactly? Where do we stand? When you go back, we look at these two, private viewing and that aspect of viewing a film as a society, as a community together. Where are we going? What is the future of this? If you look at Thomas and Bodwell in the book Film History, film festivals emerged in the Second World War and reflected a growing internationalization of cinema and the decline of the Hollywood studio system and the expansion of independent filmmaking. But when you come to around 1981, there were about 100 annual film festivals, but by 2008, there were over 4,000 film festivals. Most of these festivals were in cities, in communities. Some were, of course, international in nature, but most of them were people with a passion for film. You go to watch a film as part of a club or as part of a certain society in a certain region. So this is what led to the expansion of film festivals from 100 in 1981 to 4,000 at the around of, that is 2008. We find that film festivals have become a global distribution system. And this is the only system that can currently rival Hollywood in terms of quality and reach worldwide. Basically because these are local groupings. If you go to Kenya, that this will be presented later on by Clinton, you find we also have so many film festivals in the different counties that we have. At this juncture, I'd like to invite Clinton to just give a brief overview of the film festivals that we have in Kenya.
Thank you so much. So just like any other film industry, Kenya has quite a number of film festivals, and we just picked the ones that are very common, though throughout the counties. You will notice that Kenya has so many, almost every county has its own film festival. Among these ones, there are some that we will focus on, like the Lib Film Festival, which stands for the Lake International Pan-African Film Festival. It's one of the biggest film festivals around, celebrated in Nakuru. Then we have the Nairobi Film Festival, and our Skin Film Festival, Udada. Then we have the Caphe, that is the Kenya International Film Festival, Slum Film Festival, which has a very special niche. It focuses on stories produced in the slums across the world. So it's one of the most appreciated film festivals in the country. Then we have Eldoret Film Festival, which is a very new festival, but it focuses on the Rift Valley side. Then we have the Coast, to focus on the coast. Then we have Filamu Fest, which focuses on student projects in universities that produce film, that teach film. So it's one of also the best film festivals appreciated by film students. Then we have the Out of Africa Film Festival, and of course you will notice there's the Chinese Film Festival in Kenya. It's important to know that also. That started in 2020. Its first screening, and it was held first in 2020 in Kenya. So these film festivals play a major role in our industry. They are where we identify talents. They are where films are showcased and they're sold, and we get to see a wide range of the content that we can produce in the country. Then I go to film festivals and the concepts in hybridity. So we'll note Valk in 2008 notes that American media, that Matters Film Festival and the Japanese Concurrent Movie Festival as being the earliest precursors of film festivals in a hybrid space. Though it's also important to note that what Valk describes is very restricted in terms of the space, the location, and where the film festival is held. Then we'll go to the possibilities of the future with regards to film festivals. And this will be our main agenda. So you want to pick that up? I'll let Dr. Shapaya just pick that up, then we finalize together.
If you look currently, the concept of film festival is restricted in terms of space, in terms of location. But with the progression in terms of the internet, streaming and such, this need not be so. You find that if you go to whichever film festival that you have, it will be restricted in terms of where people can be able to access these films. Of course, with the COVID-19, these restrictions started breaking, this barrier started being broken down, so that you can actually, a film festival could actually be screened online to a watching audience, but ensuring that you have an audience for each and every offering. That aspect of discussion after watching a film or attending a film festival is automatically killed because, of course, you can access a chat and then you discuss this film on a chat, but it's not the same as being there in a physical place and talking about a film, coming up, appreciating, the views of your fellow viewers about these films that you have watched, what made an impact and what did not. It's currently possible to have a truly online film festival, but when it comes to the interests of the audience, judging the audience reactions to these films, knowing whether the audience are feeling the film or they're not, it's quite a hard thing to judge at the moment. But maybe this, we like to propose that maybe there might be a way out in terms of getting to know exactly how to manage a film festival that is online. And the first possibility, first of all, is to use students' films because these are not commercial entities. They're meant for examination. So institutions can come together, have a common film festival. You have one in Kenya at the moment, but it's not online. But this is a future possibility, so that we have an online film festival where audiences in different institutions can come together in a room, enjoy these films as others are watching in other institutions, and then they can have vibrant discussion about what they've watched, what is working and what is not working. But there are also other possibility for the future in terms of VR, maybe in terms of developing a program. If we look at what Edison had presented as the Zotoscope, as a viewing machine, where we can all view this film, but we have the experience or the emotion of being together with others in the same room, enjoying the same film. I think this will lead to an appreciation of film so that one does not have to leave their locality, one does not have to leave their room, so that they can go and watch a film in somewhere else together with others. You can do that in your own room, but maybe, through VR, through this immersive technology that is developing, we can be able to have that sensation of being in a theater together. I think with that, we have come to the end of the presentation. It was a very short presentation. It is work that is more like we're taking a prophetic role in education, which academics don't like so much, but we're just looking at the possibilities that are there, simple possibilities that are there that you can do to just try to develop the concept of a film festival, the appreciation of art in terms of film, and even going the other direction in terms of having art films instead of purely commercial films that are subjected to us through, bodies that are these big bodies that are studios that present films to us without us having that local connotation of having films that have been made by individuals, small budgets, but still are good enough to be enjoyed by the audience. With that, maybe, Are there any questions? Asanteni sana. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Or to comment, you don't have to ask a question, you can make a comment. Yes.
Thank you so much. My name is Gerard Motondi again. I was just wondering silently how film development could be incorporated in the arts, Like, for example, I do a sculpture for 6 months, a position where it could generate the history from right the mining up to the finished product, up to and including the people coming to view the process. I would think that could be a very important aspect that could also go to the market, because knowledge creation could be done through the film. In as much as people don't understand, they will see a old stone and wonder how it was done. So I would wish that if this could be incorporated in other areas of art, maybe even a painting, just from the start, the end, could form a basis of very good film structuring. Thank you.
Thank you a lot for that. It's actually a positive comment. You come from the field of sculpturing, is it? Yes. Indeed, there are attempts by creating film labs, where some of them even based in the slum areas in Kenya, to actually go and teach these small kids. It does not have age barriers, where you go and teach these small kids on how to handle a camera, because currently we have very simple cameras that are also quite affordable to communities. So these attempts have been there, so they'll be shown how to start making a film, how to go around making a story, how to use the camera, how to... lighting usually is a bit of a problem, so we prefer to use natural light, and then even how to edit this film. It is an ongoing work, but currently, even with the YouTube, online platforms, it has become very easy for you to learn how to make a film. If you look at TikTok, all those videos that people make, they can actually expand these skills that they already have, so that they can actually make a full-fledged film. We have the French embassy at Alliance, because they're the sponsors of Alliance Française. They actually have a smartphone film competition. You make a film using a smartphone, and still these results are able to be, it's still a film, although the quality and might be a bit of a problem, but at the end of the day, it is still a film, and you can actually progress by using these skills that you have to make something much better that can be used, can be broadcasted in a television station, or can be presented to a festival that has quite a good reputation. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Another question. I see.
Hi. Thank you for the presentation, and it's a very interesting issue to approach and to get closer to broader audiences. So you were proposing to have not off-site and not synchronous, not right? Expansion of the festivals.
Yes.
To have, do you also consider the festivals that have an itinerant component? Like there's a festival now here, and this festival is going to be shown in another village, and it will be presented by the local people there, or there's local contacts in each of the places. So it could be spread through other means. What do you think of an itinerant festival?
Okay. All right. You got the question? Yeah?
Sorry, I didn't get the last part of the...
I don't think any of these festivals has an itinerant component. Like there's the festival now, and then the same set of films is going to exhibit it in another place, in another time. It could be an interesting way to expand the presentation of those contents to other populations, audiences.
Okay, maybe if I give an example of some film festival, they would screen films maybe majorly in 3 slums: Kibera, Mathare. So they'll screen in Mathare this day, then they'll transfer the same content, maybe a different day, to another location. So it's normally very tedious. Then also you have to wait for that society or that community to be ready for you. And a festival, normally the average in Kenya is around 7 days, culminating to the last day where everyone comes together. So you find you have very limited screenings. If I take a case example, in 2018, Slam Film Festival had less than 10 screenings. And the festival is spread out in 54 countries. So if it's just 10, it really doesn't make those films be seen by so many people. But thank you so much for the contribution. It adds a lot, yeah.
Thank you. We have 2 more questions now.
My question is related to smartphone. I think, do anybody hasn't smartphone? Is there any person without smartphone here? Probably not. I'm asking a curious financial aspect of this. Do you believe that it's possible to make first movie on the smartphone, then create festival on the smartphone, and then broadcast it all around the world? It's I think connected to social, to economic conditions, to opportunity to do it by almost everyone. Thank you.
Indeed, it is possible, and currently smartphones are breaking these barriers that even the monopolies that were restricted to maybe having a television studio because they have the camera capacity, the camera capabilities, like they have quite a number of cameras to go and record anything. Or big production studios who are interested in who could make films. But currently, smartphones are presenting an alternative. I mentioned we have Alliance Française, which has the smartphone film competition. Although the films that they accept is 5 to 10 minutes, but it is possible, and these experiments have been done to actually make a full-fledged film using a smartphone. And it is as long as you have a good story, because a film is all about how you tell the story. Of course, the camera, the quality of the image matters, but as long as you have a good story, a story that is captivating, a story that can interest your chosen audience, then that is good enough. It has a good plot, you know what exactly you are doing, then you'll have a very good result, even without using professional equipment, even without having the most high-tech sound equipment or the latest set of lights, or the capacity, the camera with the biggest sensor. Still, it is possible to make a good film, because at the end, film is all about the narrative and how this narrative has been told. That is what will capture the interest of your audience. You can have the most high-tech gadgets in the world, but then you can end up making a very poor film, because really the story that you're telling is not of interest to this chosen audience that you want to project to. Any to add? Okay. Yeah. I hope that's there. Yes.
Thank you so much. Of course, there's a possibility to the attendees from online space to ask a question. Before that, I'm giving the mic to the all.
Thank you, Shapaya and Clinton, for this interesting presentation. This is rather a comment than a question, because when I was thinking what might you have inside of your presentation, I would like to contrast it with this what we have, but in a positive way. Because, for example, when you say about approaching film as art through virtualization of film festivals, I was thinking that it is not only about the dissemination, which can be done differently, as Monica Mendes was telling, that we can, involve different populations in different ways. So this is not only about this, and this is not changing this film or the perception of this film into film as art, not as film as entertainment, what was also present in your presentation today. So I would rather see this shift like from watching films for entertainment to watching some maybe short experimental movies as art pieces because of the change of this environment while we are being here together. So it is not just the number of people we might reach, but about the change in approach. Because yes, usually when we put on some streaming platforms, we watch Netflix for a good night. Yes, and this is pure entertainment. We don't approach these movies as art in any sense. Sometimes they might be better or worse, but if we are to think about creating some kind of environments where we are watching films together, this wouldn't be that much, at least for now, just pure entertainment, rather experimental, artistic kind of research, I would say.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Okay. So maybe I will also translate Karina Banaszkiewicz-Sadowska.
W latach 70. na posiedzeniu Światowej Federacji Filmowców
In 70s, on the sitting of the International Federation of Filmmakers,
grupa z Afryki
the group from Africa
złożyła protest przeciwko kamerze
protested against camera
jako aparatowi, który narzuca imperialne spojrzenia.
protesting against the camera as a kind of imperial mechanism that is imposing a specific kind of vision, seeing or perception.
Skracając wywód, szło o sam schemat działania kamery, czyli o perspektywę centralną, renesansową.
Putting long story short, it was about this specific mechanism in camera that is assuring this central perspective.
Chciałabym zapytać w związku z tym, jak Pan widzi możliwości uruchomienia rdzennych perspektyw, rdzennych sposobów widzenia, na przykład w perspektywie ortogonalnej, za pomocą nowych środków przekazu.
Then my question to you is what might be possible strategies to uncover indigenous perspectives, looks of the world that might be transmitted into medium of film, kind of decolonizing also the imagery.
Okay, thank you for the question. Indeed, film as a tool for disseminating messages is a very powerful tool. Sometimes you don't even have to use. You find. Let me take the case of point of the Hollywood superhero films. They don't have a specific message in them, but if you watch them as in a whole, then you kind of get a certain image that comes, that a certain message that is being disseminated, not clearly or outrightly in each and every movie, but you'll find there is this superhuman ability in which is bestowed to one individual and lacking to the rest of the society, so that Superman, it's only one man, and the rest of the society, have to depend on Superman to save them from whatever evil that is there. So you find these messages are very powerful. So to counter this in terms of decolonizing the mind, it will fall to us as a society to train or even to embark in making films on our own, in our own terms, telling stories in which communities come together and get a solution in which they can be able to engage the society. If you look at Kenya in terms of, maybe you can say corruption or poverty, Yeah, if you wait for the government, which is now the superhuman entity, let me take this example, to solve it for the sources, for the community itself, then we'll have to wait for too long. But as individuals or as communities, if you can come together and think of this society, maybe I'm living in a slum, these are the actual problems that you are facing, and these are the actual solutions that will work in my community, then we can use a film to disseminate this message so that even other people living in other areas facing the same situation as you can be able to engage with these possibilities, can be able to discuss this same film that you have made as a community and see whether they can fit in some form of structure of, get a solution. So indeed, it is, thank you for the question. It's very well thought. Yes.
And just to add on to that, the Kenya Film Commission is currently funding most films that are done in vernacular, of course, with translation, subtitles, but done in vernacular, telling the Kenyan story, the Kenyan way. And even, fortunately enough, Kenyatta University Department, the final year students are telling their stories in a vernacular manner, most projects, and they're telling the Kenyan story the Kenyan way. So it's taking shape already. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The last question.
Yes, very short. Actually, this is not a question, it's a contribution to the same. I want to link the question here to the question about making films using smartphones. I can give testimony that actually I've taught a class where the requirement was you use only your mobile phone for everything. And the students were able to do documentaries and present. So I'm from KUTV, so I'm looking for new content, and it airs. The question on decolonization through means of production, namely the camera, is a question of a theory called technological determinism. I think it's a guy called Marshall McLuhan who talked about the medium is a message, meaning how you collect the information and then become the story itself shapes the meaning that bring out. Back to his question, you use a tool that has multiplicity of use in the community, such that the more this tool here has multiple functions and services that it serves in a community like Kenya. In fact, they say the take-up of mobile phones in this country probably was more rapid than most countries. Why? The telecom system of the Kenyan society had collapsed. The mobile phone came to fill that space. Parallel to that, the banking system in this country was for the elite. The mobile phone brought the functionality of virtual money. The picking up of the money system through virtuality, because banking physically didn't happen for everyone else in this country, it is the only place where M-Pesa could have been invented. Why? Because the means of production is pervasively doing other things for the people, such that if you use it to make film, you will have now opportunity for a new way of doing media, like #OurStories has shown us, whereby someone with a phone created an industry which is online, you can check it, and they are able to actually compete with, Fox News or CBA, that kind of thing. So how do you stop imperialism? You take on things that you have control of and you use them to tell your story. And that changes how stories are seen.
Good. Thank you. It was a comment. Thank you for that, Doc. I'd like to thank you all for listening to us, and have a very, very good day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, both to Benath and to Clinton. Now it is my pleasure to invite here Carla Zanin, from Opera Network from Italy. Before she starts, just one comment or note. All of you who is going to present the PPT or whatever you wanted to do from your own computer, do not forget to reach the Google Meet link and share the content with the audience online. The title of Carla's talk is VR Impact on Dramatic Storytelling of Opera Live Performances, Emotional Content Representation between Physical and Digital. Carla, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Adrian. Good morning, everybody. I'm waiting for my presentation. Okay, thank you. Of course, doesn't work. Carol, thank you. Okay, only your hands working. The second, now the second, not the first? No, I want only go forward. But no. What's going on? From this, okay. Okay, it's going. I want to go back now. I want to go back, please. It's going forward, not back. Back now is opposite, okay. Just to know. Okay. So, when we talk about musical theater, and more specifically about opera, we always refer to an interaction among people. What kind of interaction? Physical, visual, auditory, but above all, emotional. What is opera? Opera is the intersection where all arts, poetry, theater, music, dance, visual art, set and costume design meet and develop, flowing into a global and immersive experience. The operatic representation feeds on a profound emotional interchange flux among the artists on stage and backstage, and the audience. The music score, the libretto, the visual content, the dance, and all the technical components involved in contribute to enhance this continuous interaction, creating a unique atmosphere. Is the relationship to the audience one of the cores of the opera's performance? The most of music research does not take so much care of the audience, but it is more linked to a study activity around the question of new languages, in some cases too much closed in its own dark caves, while instead it would need to constantly confront the spectator. Why the spectator is crucial? The audience is not formed by passive and mere users, but it should be the ultimate goal because it represents the community and more generally the society, the place where trends are determined and narratives are created and recreated, and where archetypes take shape. The community is made up of individuals thirsty for beauty, and the beauty does not reside only in the intent of the artist, but it is also in the eye of the beholder. So the beauty is a result shared by the creator, the artist, and the observer, the spectator. Beauty is created within this relationship in a continuous evolution. So, this intersection of arts and also of traditions was staged in the context of the case study we attended yesterday night, Orpheus Luanda and the Chthonios journey. This experience comes from a research, virtual stage concept. This research started 3 years ago during the pandemic and still ongoing. Thanks to a series of experimentations in different opera staging, among all Orpheus and the Ritorno di Ulisse in Patria by Monteverdi, Don Giovanni and Le Nozze di Figaro by Mozart, today it is possible to bring the first results of a new methodology of hybrid staging and outline the next steps of this research in progress. Virtual stage. Innovative horizons for a new opera live performances between philology and technology. A research addressed to investigate and experiment new ways of opera staging and rehearsal. From problems and needs to new challenges and opportunities. The pandemic and the consequent containment measures have led to new challenges and stimuli that have prompted the live entertainment sector to deeply reflect and research the role of hybridity and virtual interaction in live performance, particularly related to opera and musical theater. Digital transition in classic music sector is still very late. It is important to underline that the classic music sector and its professionals, instrumentalists, singer, professor, get a strong gap in the use of technological tools, not only in advanced knowledge, such as computer-based music, but in most cases, in the basic contents, such as networking applications or music notation software, and so on. While this gap is not existing in the contemporary and pop rock music, where for decades the use of the electronic first and the digital later have always characterized the stylistic code of these genres. So developing new digital approaches and modality applied to classic music have been really challenging. In undertaking this path, we were aware of the high risk of rejection and criticism from colleagues and from the classic music world more generally, as this research would have brought innovation and breakage just in a sector where tradition has always had a strong value and identity content. But it was immediately clear that this innovation would have never separated from the tradition, but it would have created a relationship between philology and technology, which is one of the main lines of virtual stage concept. Virtual stage, we can identify 3 main aspects of research and content during the 3 years experimentation. Audio, experimentation combination currently using new software, hardware and tools, working to minimize latency in online interaction, sampling of original instruments preserved in museum, use of MIDI keyboards and EWI, electronic wind instruments, combined with acoustic instruments, multi-track recordings, audio-video tutorials, partial playbacks, visual and staging, blended hybrid mode, artists in place combined with immersive technologies, real virtual scenography, avatar projection, hologram, methodological aspects, developing a new blended and hybrid methodology for higher education professional training rehearsals. Aesthetical aspects. Imagining and designing of new formats focus on how to save and enhance emotional communication in hybrid performance. So during the development of virtual stage in the context of my activity as creating and stage director, several questions came out, concentrating especially in the visual and aesthetic aspects. The first questions regarding hybridity in the opera representation were: how much can feelings, emotions, and moods be transferred in virtual environments? Where do the emotions reside? How are they produced? And therefore, are emotions virtual? Who is real? Who is virtual? We can see here one character real and one virtual. Who can define which is one and which is the other? The interpretative key of my work is inspired by the vision of the psychologist James Hillman, who carried on new studies approaches based on Jung's work. Are emotions a virtual reverberation of the soul? The soul shapes our inner world. The soul comes from ancient Greek psyche, and it is related to the archetypes of Western society myth according to James Hillman's work. This invisible world is populated by images that come from memories, external impulses, unconscious stimuli. The emotions are produced by these images and are strongly interconnected to, able to modify our physical apparatus, for example, to the endocrine system, and our way to interact in the space-time through, for example, our character traits. Every action we perform, every experience we make, produce, and express an external reflection in physical matter and also an internal reflection in the world or our inner images, which generate emotions, moods, feelings, perceptions, and thoughts. According to the traditional definition, archetypes are the primary forms that govern the psyche. However, they cannot be contained only by the psyche, since they are also manifest themselves in physical, social, linguistic, and aesthetic modalities. Consequently, they find connection with culture, art, and imagination. Archetypes can be considered emotional and behavioral states that we stage in our lives and can be represented by myth. Every form of expression, every human emotion manifests itself in symbols that pre-exist the individual psyche and that organize it in the archetypes. Archetypes are pure forms shared by all humanity, sedimenting the collective unconscious of all peoples. James Hillman. The primary language of these archetypal models is the metaphorical storytelling of myth. We can find the representation of these models of the human nature within every culture in mythology, religion, art, epic, drama, and so on. Okay. The dramatic storytelling is poetic. The soul, which can be also defined as poetic mind, works through symbols and metaphors in an aesthetical way, while the logical mind analyzes and categorizes, dividing good and bad, right and wrong. We can say that the soul talks through a poetic language. In the myth, there is an allegorical reading of the events In our case study yesterday, we met Orpheus and his journey. But this is not exactly a travel to the hell intended as a place of torture and pain, but it is a travel to his own inner world. It is the path of the artist when falls down in the creative ecstasy to find out new inspiration in this inner world, which is the soul. There is pain, for sure, but it is a creative pain, a creative energy. This is an initiatory path. Therefore, coming back to opera, the interpretation of the poetic content, the music and the libretto, is not literal, but symbolic. And Orpheus represents the archetype of musician and poet, able to activate the deep energy that vibrates in the depth of the anima mundi, which is the nature. In fact, he uses the poetic language to interact with animals, plants, and stones. Dante Alighieri and Orpheus, the same journey to the underworld. The myth of Orpheus seeking Eurydice, in my vision, is the archetype that inspired Dante's journey in the Divine Comedy in search of his beloved Beatrice. They are both poets who make an initiatory journey to the otherworldly mystical world. In the Convivio, Orpheus is quoted by Dante to illustrate the allegorical sense. Orpheus, with his lyra, is like the wise man who, with his voice, could make docile those who do not have an intellectual life. Siccome quando dice Ovidio che Orfeo facea con la cetera mansuete le fiere e gli arbori e le pietre a se muovere, che vuol dire che lo savio uomo con lo strumento della sua voce faria mansuecere miliare di crudeli cuori e faria muovere la sua volontà di coloro che non hanno vita di scienza ed arte, e coloro che non hanno vita ragionevole alcuna sono quasi come pietre. A circular pattern from opera to opera. So, opera is the intersection of arts based on different levels of relationship. One of the cores is the emotional representation exchanged among people. The emotional contents come from the soul with its virtual environment interfacing the physical world. Archetypes are the primary symbolic structures of the soul. The soul uses the poetic language and metaphors through its archetypes. The poetic language is the media to read the libretto and the musical score for the opera representation. How does the emotional relation work? In my vision, the emotional relation moves in a circular way. The emotions bypass space-time and they are not transferred horizontally from to someone, but spread in all directions, enriched by the continuous exchange. The relationship is not me, is not you, but it is the space between us. I like to imagine this space, no space, like the field between the electron cloud and the atomic nucleus. I imagine this as pure energy in motion. So in this way, the performer play its part and be aware of the inspired and poetic content can influence the other performers and the spectators, and all of them can send back their perceptions continuously, and even in a hybrid environment where the characters can be mixed, real and virtual, the audience can be in presence and in remote. A according to this new vision, maybe we can imagine the operatic representation as a continuous dialogue between virtuality and reality seamlessly, as the real contains the virtual and vice versa. Same characters, different emotions. We can see our Leonardo Delisi. Another relevant point. In many operas, the use of allegorical deities characters that are actually emotions and moods, for example, hope, virtue, love, fortune, well expresses the interaction between the physical and the virtual. In fact, in the traditional opera, the emotion is portrayed by a physical character. So in the hybrid opera, we can imagine new forms of representation where the emotion comes back to its original form, virtual, represented by an avatar, for example. But we know that the avatar projection technology is a hybrid expression, since it uses a physical body that becomes a virtual performing image through a video projection. Okay, I have got slowly. This partial answer led me to new vision through which approach the opera staging, where the soul can be a virtual environment that contains a physical environment. So, in addition to transferring one's physical life into the metaverse, perhaps is it possible to reflect and reverberate also other parts of us, such as the soul and its emotional content? Can be a little more. I have to go. Can be view our opera more attractive than traditional. It can be for sure equally engaging, evocative, and could really open up to new unexpected static languages of interpretation. The hybridization is the core. And I want to dedicate a little time to my favorite hero, is Luanda Magere. I can't miss him, I'm sorry. I immediately fell in love with Luanda Magere, the great warrior of your community, and we met him, some echoes of him yesterday in our case study. He is so close to Western mythology heroes like Achilles. Luanda is incredibly powerful and invulnerable to harm, except for a single weakness. While Achilles' weakness point is in his physical body, Luanda's weakness lies in his virtual body, the shadow, which is the soul. His shadow bleeds, and moreover, he undergoes a metamorphosis. He becomes a rock in the same way of a character narrated within of its metamorphosis, like the nymph Daphne, for example, who has been transformed into a laurel plant. And this rock transformation makes Luanda immortal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carla, for a wonderful insight. We have 7 minutes for discussion, so feel free to ask the question. Bogna.
In Italian.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. I think I will make certain references to yours in my presentation as well. I have a question. Where do you place rationality in this system? Is it part of the psyche, the way you define it? Is it part of the output? Is it part of some other faculty of the human species?
Do you mean rationality instead of creativity?
It's an open question. How do you define it?
Okay. I think that creativity contains rationality. And so creativity and inspiration that always come from God's, from the divine. Creativity is not mine. And the product of my creation, I must offer always to others, because it is an offering. It is the sacrum facere. The sacrifice is from Latin, sacrum facere, make sacred. So, all my life, in this path, we can find everything. Of course, also rationality, because it is very important. Because rationality gives me also to stay to standing a lot and not confusing. But of course, at the same time, I am always offering to the divine and waiting for what the divine want to tell me. Like Homer. In fact, Homer starts always, Muse, tell me. And he writes. And I do the same. Muse, sing me is the same, because poetry or music is the same. So sometimes we translate sing, sometimes tell me. But it is exactly the same. So I hope my answer is good for you.
Thank you. Do we have any question from online audience? Not yet. Please feel free to use the chat and post your questions there. Any further questions from audience in situ? I see the hand.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I love opera because my mom played it when we were little. My question is, you brought up the aspect of Luanda Magere. Do you think the idea of hybridization is going to create a convergence between African legends and opera without losing the authenticity of original opera from Italy?
Without losing, sorry? Can you
losing.
Can you repeat, because I don't hear very well? Of course, we can. Do you mean that if we can use this subject for an opera? Is this? Oh, we can create a lot of? So do you mean it is the possibility to lost some tradition in the combination? Okay. I think, as I wrote, hybridization for me is the core. But why? Because we have a common state of being. We are all distinct but not separated. So you have your culture and tradition, and it's really great, and I appreciate so much. I have mine. I have my archetypes, of course, but we are all connected and interconnected. So when we decided to combine something, it is very important to keep in mind respect, love, appreciation, and offering. I'm not scared if someone teach me another culture. I'm really open. So yesterday, I don't know if you were here, maybe not. We staged a very important moment. It was a case study, but in my opinion, a very important moment because we were really able to stay all together, but without losing any expression of us. and it was really great for me. It was, I know, a dream, a miracle. So I don't know if other people can agree with this, some who attended this show, but it was a prototype to collaboration, because if we put peace, deep sharing, and respect, nobody can lose anything, but only enrich. This is my vision, of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I got approval to extend the Q&A session for next 5 minutes, and we have a question from Mr.
Yes, a very interesting presentation. My question is quite simple, because I'm curious to understand, do you see it, this hybridization, being applied more to modern opera?
Sorry. Okay, you mean traditional opera?
Yes. I mean
repertoire. You mean repertoire?
The repertoires.
Different repertoire.
Yeah. No, my focus. My question is it? Do you feel it is more applicable, translatable in historic or modern opera? And the reason why I'm asking is because also this issue of language and the construct of the application of modern concepts and constructs within this concept of hybridization of virtual and reality, augmented and virtual reality. I'm curious to know if there's any blurring of the lines.
In my vision, of course, as everything we know now comes from archetypes. Archetypes are still staging everywhere, also in contemporary modern opera, in traditional opera. For example, we have my colleague is working on an archetype of ancient myth, but in a very contemporary language. So we also, is you, not behind you, is you. Yes? So he is a composer, contemporary composer, and he worked a lot on several new opera and different also repertoire, but the language is the same. So it's the difference is the repertoire. For example, the opera from 19th century is the opera, the Baroque opera, contemporary opera, but the subject and the application is also yesterday we staged an opera, and we wrote together with the music and dance department of the university. We wrote together, and it was an opera for sure. So it's really open. This is the great thing, I suppose. Yes. It's open. It's open. Absolutely open. It's circular.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question.
The last question is coming from our yesterday hero.
It's not going to be a question. It's a support. I want, because of about the question we heard. Opera was born hybrid 4 centuries ago. When in Florence they wanted to make an experimentation, they had to hybridate theater, poetry, dance, music, everything. And most of all, the biggest hybridation operation phenomenon in historical is here in my voice. Because the traditions, all the Western traditions of vocal techniques convey together in order to form this very special instrument. You know, this is not a natural instrument I use. I use my own physiology, but I cannot use it in a spontaneous way. I have to build an instrument. So every day I have to hybridate. I don't know what to say.
Hybridate.
Can you understand my point? I have to be able to sing with a very powerful voice without effort in a big theater. This is not something you are born with. You are born with the predisposition to do it. And then it's a long, long time work because the technology is not mechanical, it's physiological. So this hybridation is, I have in my mind a sound and I have this image I have here, every day must be ready. So I cannot just say it's done and it will be there all every day of my career. I have to keep building it every day. So I think this is the most emotional phenomenon that you have a feeling here and you have to find the instrument to produce it. So I find it is so much hybrid. Okay, I hope I gave also my contribution.
So he is our great solo singer. So maybe Federico.
May I ask you to? Yeah. Okay.
I know it's very late. I would like just to comment on your question on the musical point of view. We worked very hard with the music and dance department of the KU in the last weeks and months, and my only aim was to push them, to invite them to propose us their most traditional heritage music. In fact, in the beginning, they were proposing me some gospels. I love gospel, of course. Everything is beautiful. But what we were looking for with Carla was to go into the bottom of the heritage of your traditions. And in fact, we asked for a hero for Luanda. We evocated him. And finally, Priscilla Gitonga suggested this subject. And with Elijah Dongo, I selected these pieces, Dudu and Vaida, because I thought they were very representative of the soul of this culture. And I just 1 second want to underline that I had also to fight a little bit, because we, as instrumentalists, we joined to the Luanda part, and the choir joined to our part, but without losing identity, because they were singing each note of Monteverdi without changing anything, and we were trying to play the African music without disturbing too much, I hope. So this was just our first aim, and I think the result was good on this point of view, because I think that Monteverdi was very philological with the voice of Leonardo, and African music was very energy, and everything was as it was. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to all of them. They are wonderful. Thank you for your applause.
Thank you, Adam.
Now it is my pleasure to invite here a colleague of Carla, who is Andrea Bareggi from Opera Network, also from Italy. The title of his talk is Networked Music Performance Made Easy, Open Source, and the budget technologies for low latency rehearsal and distance in opera and musical theater. Andrea, are you ready?
Yes, thank you. I have to set up the presentation. Can you send the presentation on the screen, please? No. Oh, it's from my laptop actually. not HDMI, it's through the Meet. Yes, done. I'm sharing. Sharing the screen. Okay, someone from the technical, please. Yeah. Okay. So can you put the presentation full screen, please? Thank you. Well, thank you to my presentation about networked music performance and open source and budget technology for low latency distant rehearsal in opera and musical theater. I have to thank my colleagues from Opera Network for making such wonderful presentation and introduction to my work so that we can concentrate about technology. This project did not come all of a sudden during the night because it's several years that we are working on this project and several partners are working on that. Not only Opera Network and Conservatorio Puccini of La Spezia, but also Ensemble San Felice, Giunti Psychometrics, and several stakeholders such as USM Studia that I'm representing here now beside Opera Network. All of us, we are teachers and trainers. We work into the academic world, but also in vocational and vocational training. And so this is the starting point of my presentation about blended education, the transition from blended education to vocational training for the sector of opera. The COVID-19 crisis has done a stroke on this opera sector, and we were forced to switch from traditional education and training to distant education, so that we learned something about this new kind of teaching and making pedagogical training. So that the blended education needs some adaptation to our courses, such as a structured planning, some design of the courses in advance, and special instructional techniques that take care of the synchronous and asynchronous education, and then new methods of communication and other technologies. Blended education is not a new concept because it started back in the 60s from North American university and the UK universities, and it was mainly based on TV broadcastings and early computer-based and multimedia models. Now we have switched to a new kind of model that is based mainly on web technology and mobile technology. We have not to forget that our colleagues, students and professors from the Far East are not using too much computers. They are using mainly mobile phones, modern mobile phones, for connecting to teaching platforms such as Moodle, Zoom, and so on. So what's the step from blended education to the distant opera training? We have three major problems to be solved. The main problem is to do music rehearsal in real time, stage rehearsal in real time, and then to share synchronous sharing of interpretation that could include the editing of a score. Musicians are used to share a lot of information by writing down their annotation on scores, and also conductors and stage directors instruction. So what are the tools that we developed through our projects, different projects financed by the European Union, which are the tools that we developed for solving this problem? There are four families of tools. The first one is the tool related to networked music performance. It means that we have to create and be able to use a tool that allows synchronous distance rehearsal with minimum latency. And when I'm talking about minimum latency, there is a physiological number of milliseconds that we perceive as an effective latency for doing real-time exchange between musicians. It goes from 35 to 70 milliseconds. The second solution that we have found is partial playback. Partial playback, all of the people that attended the shows yesterday night here in the venue or online in distance experimented partial playback, because we pre-recorded some tracks for making the sound more immersive and allowing the choir and the musician to be to get sustained in their task. So we have this partial playback that is not a merely karaoke of what we are pre-recording in our studios, but it is a pedagogical method. We call it music tutorial, for allowing musicians and trainers to train together and play with other people in a partially synchronous way. The other families of tools that we are developing for our task, it's a synchronous graphic environment for staging artists. We are using the most simple tool that is used by university teachers, collaborative whiteboard, for doing a synchronous staging rehearsal, and we use a very simple avatars that we designed in approximately, we developed this kind of solution in 2 weeks. So it is something very simple to be used, and I will show a demonstration later in this presentation. Finally, we have online team collaboration and communication tools that musicians are not really used to, such as using Google and meta tools such as WhatsApp, Facebook, YouTube, and so on. It is obvious that these tools are commonly used for doing social networking, but the use of this for pedagogy in music was not so developed. So we had to train teachers and trainers to use this kind of tools to make their lesson more immersive and give the possibility of following this lesson even with distance. So who are the beneficiaries of these tools? Well, there are the musicians, of course, and we can divide them in three categories, such as instrumentalists, singers, but also vocal coach and continuo players. I've taken vocal coach and continuo player in another category because they are the help of the stage director. Then, of course, there are the stage directors and the orchestral and choir conduction. And finally, also the technician, and we can divide the technician in two categories, the sound technician and the stage technicians. They have a very important role in the hybridization of opera training because it's the technician that are the supports to the art team that is on the stage. So as I said before, this project takes several years to be developed, and Opera Network has several years of expertise in the field of network and enhanced opera training and ensemble music. Our group, led by Carla Zanin and Federico Bardazzi, is a triple winning group of project in the European environment. The first one was Virtual Stage. The second, in Mediastat Virtus. Virtual Stage is really connected on vocational and vocational training in the sector of the opera. In Mediastat Virtus is related to the academic part, and the new one, Metamorphose, led by Özlem Sudria, is related about the transitional aesthetics into the deep relationship that we created between technology and live music. Finally, we arrived in Caphe. We hope to provide a fundamental help to our group of work about the use of technology, immersive technology, in the transition, the digital transition for the opera sector by using virtual reality for sound. So we can divide our techniques in three categories. We are talking about the technical part now: networked music performance, the partial playback, and then the online workspace for music and extra musical content. Let's jump into the first topic, that is networked music performance. Networked music performance is a technique that allows to rehearse in real time even when the musicians are not in the same place. So, in order to explain this kind of technique, we realized a video from the Virtual Stage project. We can see Maestro Leonardo De Risi and Maestro Daniel Clément performing a lesson, a music lesson with two pupils. One is me and the other one is Patrick Nedel that is singing. So if I show the video, audio please. Wait, yes. Sorry about that. Should be okay now. Yeah. I want to stress out that this is not a way of recording different source of sound and putting it together afterwards with some digital audio workstation software, but all of this is happening in a synchronous way, so that if the singer is doing some rallentando or some ritardando, the pianist, I can react in real time with him, so that it can be used in a synchronous way for doing master classes, blended intensive program, and also music rehearsal for the opera. So that there are different software that can be useful for networked music performance. Personally, we tested 4 of them: Gemulus, Gemkazam, Fairplay, and GemStudio.io. And we selected Jamulus for the characteristic of easiness of use, and also because Jamulus was able to include an unlimited number, well, almost unlimited number of participants. That is not true for the other software. Also, Jamulus is open source and it is in constant enhancement by a very rich number of developers. Maestro Leonardo De Risi carried out some assessment based on networked music performance on Jamulus, because during the pandemic in Italy we were forced to stop the traditional teaching environment in the conservatory, so that Maestro De Risi chose to use Jamulus for ensuring networked music performance course. So in this slide we can see some results about the appreciation of teacher and student. This is a qualitative scale from 0 to 8 of lessons in presence, that is in blue, lessons, distant lessons without Jamulus, that is in orange, and distance lesson with Jamulus, that is in gray. So we can see from this graphic that the results from teacher and students show that the use of Jamulus can achieve results similar, really similar to the lesson that we had in a traditional way. The second kind of tools that we developed is the partial playback. Partial playback, it cannot be defined like a karaoke, because it is a tool that we can modify in real time, and we use a digital audio workstation. This is the example of Reaper, that is a freemium digital audio workstation associated to a plugin that is called the Contact Player. Contact Player can import a sampled instrument. We will talk later about the sample instrument, but now I just want to show you very briefly an example of partial playback. So this will be here. So in this example, Oksana is playing the two parts of Purtimiro from the Incoronazione di Poppea by Claudio Monteverdi. This is a pedagogical tool because when a singer is playing one part, he can switch to the part that he wants to be trained on. And also the interesting thing is that also the pianist can exclude the voice, and can exclude his accompanying and be trained with the voice of the two singers online. So Virtual Studio technology and sample instrument are used in this kind of project, but we know that in historically informed music we need also to use some temperaments. So temperament is a particular kind of tuning of the instrument that is based on historical reconstruction. So we asked ourselves if it was possible to tune a MIDI keyboard. So with our team of technicians led by Nicola Cavina, we worked hard on the possibility of using different temperaments. So for example, yesterday the show you attended was recorded and represented in mesotonic tuning, so that our philosophy that is philology and technology can find a real application in this kind of technology. finally, our last environment for stage rehearsal is a simple whiteboard that we created for moving different people on the stage. So this was simply developed by my student in ESM Sudria, and allowed our singers to place themselves into a stage, a virtual stage, actually. The future. So the graphical environment for stage rehearsal need to be 3D and immersive, so that thanks to Caphe we have to develop new kind of interaction in 3D by using different gamification styled environment. We selected a few of them. One is Second Life with Accademia Elettronica. The other one are 3D, fully 3D, but more simple than Second Life. For example, Minecraft, because we have to keep in mind that band pass is very important to ensure the fluency of opera rehearsal. So we need to use something that it uses less bandwidth. And the final environment that we would like to test is a spatial.io that allows immersive virtual reality for our singers. There are also other tools that we are developing, such as the tools for organization, concert programs, stage director notes, and sharing augmented score, and finally live digital sound processing and triggering, such as Faust, developed by Grame. But this will be enhanced in the next project, that is Metamorphose. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and if you have some question, I will be happy to reply and answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you for be precise in time. So, questions, please. Feel free. No question. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Do you think that collaboration projects in virtual media for music do not hamper in any way the quality of sound? Or do you have to just reconcile with it and accept the fact that there are opportunities there but also some limitations?
Well, quality of sound is my major problem in this project. So that's why I'm there for solving this kind of problem. Actually, the actual plan is to use normal bandwidth for streaming at the same time the sound in real time and also images. Of course, there is a trade-off between the bandwidth that we can give to the sound and the bandwidth that we can give to the video. So that's why even in a normal streaming environment we have to balance this bandwidth. The major problem with a reduced bandwidth will be the latency. So it depends on the objective of this hybridation. If we are doing it for the public, it means that the public has a limited interaction with the opera and the show, generally speaking. This can be done without not so many problems with the latency. When I say limited interaction, I'm talking about the interaction that you could have with Zoom, Skype, or other VoIP technology. So it will work for the public. They will interact with us, but without consuming our bandwidth that is important for networked music performance. Because networked music performance is the most bandwidth consuming activity. When we rehearse with other people in distance, we need to be with them with a few milliseconds of shift. And we immediately hear that if we change of 20 milliseconds, it's like our partner. If I'm accompanying a singer on the piano, it's like my singer is beside me with the 0 latency and 20 meters away with 70 milliseconds of latency. So that's the problem. It depends on the interaction.
Okay, another question from Federico.
Thank you, Andrea, for your explanation. I'm very happy that we could have these two presentations nearby, because so we could have two different point of view, no? More technical, this second one. And I would like just to add a few things, just a comment. That we are already speaking with the music department of KU to experiment this technology Andrea was presenting. As you know, with Caphe project, we will be here in autumn 24. And so from now I want to make this announcement that we will be able to experiment these technologies with the students and professors of the Kenyatta University, either for workshops and master classes, but either to prepare a new or maybe to work on the joint case study we represented yesterday. So this, I think, is very important in this session, and I want also to underline what Andrea already said, that for us it's very important to learn here, because we are here to develop these technologies and to combine with the voir and all your competencies that many partners here you have. And in fact, our methodology is a combination, because what Andrea was explaining, I think it's very important to underline that it's a combination of different tools together, because to use one or another, it's relatively, I don't want to say normal, because in our sector it's not normal, but it's something new. But to combine this for the opera, for the staging, for the interaction in many levels, it's very innovative, I think. Thank you, Andrea.
We have to reassure our partner that some very good online courses have been developed in our virtual stage project, so that it will be relatively easy to use this kind of project, and everybody can access to the platform for learning this kind of technology.
Of course, as we know, virtual reality gives us a lot of opportunities. Do you have such a temptation, or all of you, or opera, sorry to say, opera people, for example, to give opera, for example, with Maria Callas or Luciano Pavarotti as a hologram?
Back to life. Yes, actually, this kind of technology can bring back to life some characters that are not anymore with us, or even use some fictional characters. This is mostly related to the visual aspect, but what should not be forgotten is that beside the visual aspect, we have also the sound aspect. So we have to work also on immersive sound and think about the source of sound to make the final result from an acoustic point of view reliable and credible to the public. Yes, of course.
Thank you so much both for questions and for the replies. And now I want to hear some applause for Andrea. The last speaker for the morning session should be, or is, actually Bogna Gladen-Obijinska. since we are running out of time. So please welcome Bogna, who is going to speak about between the private and the shared, a genius of virtual and hybrid load. Bogna, the stage is yours.
Please put my presentation on. Yes. And you can share it to the Google stream. Number 6. Okay, good morning everybody. Still morning, good afternoon actually. I will try to be brief so that you don't have to starve here. I will speak about certain aspects of the virtual and hybrid environment in the context of contextualization of our experience of places. When we are talking about our experience in general, we can divide it into 3 spheres. The natural, the virtual, and the hybrid, and of course this is a very simplistic division and only created with the introduction of the virtual and hybrid new experiences, hence we can talk about the natural. Within each of them, we can talk about the external the external world that we experiment, that we experience. And by the external, I mean the physical mostly. The physical that we can experience with our senses. So we treat this external world in a realistic approach, philosophical realistic approach. I will not go into it because we don't have time, as basically shared, as objective. The object of our experience is shared. We are in the same room and we are all assuming that it is the same room, that we are sharing the same object of our experience, yet each of us is experiencing this object from a completely different perspective. We can't both be in the same chair at the same time. Therefore, the experience of this room for each of us is completely different. When we talk about the internal experience, I'm talking about everything that Carla described before, so all of our psychic experiences coming from reflection, memory, analysis, emotions, but also our rational procedures that we take in order to process all these experiences. Now that type of experience, the internal one, of course is also non-ubiquitous because it's happening within our physical selves. However, we can think about ways of mediating it, for example through poetry or other means of art, so that we can share certain common experiences. And I think yesterday was one of the moments when we could feel synchrony in our experiencing of our internal processes in that sense. So art is very instrumental here. Now, when we think about the virtual external experience, what happens is that we are given a completely new opportunity. First of all, we can consider the object that is shared if we are experiencing it in a virtual instrumentarium as private. As we sit here, each of us could be actually having a different space in which we are operating, and each of them would be, for each of us, completely private and individual. It could be, however, if we are sharing the same one, because we can have an experience in VR from the same perspective of the same person at the same time. We can all occupy the same first-person character playing the same virtual space. And we can have a potentially identical experience. This also creates certain opportunities for our internal experience and reactions, both reflection, emotional load, etc., in reaction to such experiences of the external world in VR. via, for example, recording of our experience as process. Because when we are doing a process in a game, the first-person game, for example, in a virtual environment, we are making certain moral choices, for example, which are completely private and difficult to share in our real life because nobody can repeat our experience from real life in exactly the same sequence, whereas in VR we can do that. So the internal experiences in VR are potentially identical and ubiquitous. When we go to the hybrid experiences of the external object, of course we have a layered superimposed VR experiences with those that I mentioned before, superimposed on the reality that we believe is shared, the one from the natural experience. We can have ubiquitous elements that are recontextualized to a new physical place. We can have a mix of all of them. What happens to the internal experience? Yes. It's similar. We can superimpose certain private contents and certain private narratives, certain private expectations, reflections, memories, etc., over a shared object. And each of us can have a completely different experience now in the mixed reality environment to everybody else, although we are sharing the same physical and natural object. I will move now to the second part of my presentation, the genius loci. You probably know this term. It's a place that is defined as not just a space in two-dimensional, three-dimensional framework, but a space that, as Christian Norberg Schultz once defined, transforms a place from a mere environment, a space where elements or phenomena take place, to a phenomenon in itself. It's a place that captures our attention. It's a place that inspires our imagination, and now we're moving into the internal experience of something external that's concretized and inspired and finished by our own creative powers, and that generates meaning, not just for ourselves, but also for our community. In summary, a place that has a genius loci is a contextualized space, yes? A space that has concretized elements to it. A place that involves us aesthetically through certain elements that become a foci of our attention. Without them, we don't have a place with a genius loci. The genius is there, we feel it, we experience it. It is totalizing in a sense that a mere space that for us is infinite becomes a dwelling. And this is a term that's used mostly by Martin Heidegger, as you know. Oh, I haven't flipped the slide, I'm so sorry. Sorry. So the first slide was this one. I wanted to tell you about the genius loci that we have experienced 3 days ago. Okay, let's move. This is the quote I read to you. Now we're here. So it's gathering and totalizing in a sense that we own it. When we enter such a place with a genius loci, we believe it's private because we are inserting our private experiences, our internal experiences, memories, expectations, reflections, emotions into it, and aesthetic responses that are not objectively there, yes? And therefore, we believe it's homey. If we remember the remarks that our friend Adrian made at one of the presentations about the feeling of alienation from the VR experiences, this is the opposite of what the genius loci tells us about a place, about a space. It's somewhere we feel at home, yes? Hence the dwelling. It's a Heideggerian term that Norberg Schultz also borrowed. Now, that place also has a direction, a sense of direction and an orientation, usually created by some element that's a focus of it. And I will give you an example in a second, what it means. And also, the last characteristic of places with genius loci is its identity and identification that people can have with it. So it creates communities. It creates a shared experience that others can identify with and with each other through that place. Now my Polish friends can go to sleep, because I will be talking about one particular place in Warsaw that they probably know very well. This is a roundabout, Charles de Gaulle roundabout, that is located in the very center of Warsaw at the crossroads north, south and east-west. It didn't have that element until 2002, when the artist Joanna Rajkowska decided to build a palm tree that obviously cannot survive in the Polish climate, and it was received with great debate in Poland, and now, 10 years later, 11 in fact, it has become a pivotal, recognized place that everybody wants to meet at, that people even stopped calling Charles de Gaulle roundabout, we call it the Palm Place. What is the palm about? And why am I saying that this palm, as a, again, Heideggerian work of art, has recreated the whole space into a place with a genius loci? The title of it is Greetings from Jerusalem Avenue. Joanna Rajkowska went to Jerusalem before she made this piece of art, and was under impression from places that had been obliterated during some conflict back then. And when she returned home, she studied the history of the street called Jerusalem Avenue. This is one of the roads, the one that goes east-west. And she discovered that there used to be a little village outside of Warsaw in the 17th century that was a settlement created by the Jewish community called the New Jerusalem. Hence, the road that connected that little village with the center of Warsaw was called the Jerusalem Avenue. That little village didn't last long, because the Jewish community that had created it moved into the city center very quickly after as little as 20 years, but the place remained. For us, today's Warsawers, whenever we walk anywhere in Warsaw, what we experience is the feeling of loss. We walk and we know we're walking on the ashes of our ancestors who died in the Warsaw Rising, and especially in certain districts like Muranów, like Wola, we walk in the places where we can physically see gaps from buildings that had been destroyed, and from the population and the community of our Jewish friends that have disappeared. This poem, when I walk from the Charles de Gaulle, the poem roundabout, eastwards, always reminds me of that. I imagine those people who are missing. I imagine the Warsaw from before the Second World War. And it's a very powerful experience. And then I go back and right to the north of this palm tree is our university, where we learn about history, about culture, about art, about everything. And all this creates this completely irreplaceable genius loci for that place. Now, let's move to the content so you can see what can happen to this if we imagine that we move the Charles de Gaulle roundabout with its palm tree into the VR. We have lots of opportunities, and I think we also have threats there, VR and AR both. If we imagine that we are now entering a VR room where we can see the little village, the New Jerusalem, where we can see all the stalls, the houses that are missing, we are seeing them as though they were real. We are reacting to them as though they were external. They belonged to the objective reality and not our own experience, not the one we are concretizing. It's the one we're facing. We're facing as an encounter with the other. Yes? It takes away the pivotal point that gives us orientation in the real experience that I just showed you, because we can now not see the vertical dimension of our own experience that's represented metaphorically by the palm tree. We can now just walk around like we do in the city, and I call it this linear flânerism, a term borrowed from Benjamin, which may defocus us, yes? It can take away the focus of the experience. The spatial extension breaks the sort of peaceful feeling of dwelling in that place, of its enclosure that we are now used to in Warsaw, where we can either stay there and contemplate, or we can walk out of, or we can look from into the perspectives. When we start doing this in the VR, we are simply extending in infinity, basically, because the space is infinite and it doesn't have the kind of enclosure for us. And yes, I think I've mentioned the other two. This is our palm tree in winter. As you can see, it survives winters. Now, I'd like to see, and this will be my conclusion, what these experiences actually do. If you look at the history of the VR development, in the past, between the 70s and the 2000s, all the VR spaces, and especially the one, I haven't moved this, and especially the one that I have marked in bold, the virtual Denkraum by Fleischmann and Strauss, they were all about the meeting of the minds. They were all metaphorical, virtual, but without the physical reenactment, without the recreation of the physical space. Then we, of course, had the rise of the modern virtual world as we know them. Nowadays there are projects to bring it back, and that's the last one that, again, Fleischmann and Strauss are fighting for. What is happening here? Well, I think that what we are doing by moving our experiences into the virtual world is a sort of kenosis. It's a Greek term, correct me if I'm wrong in interpreting it. I'm interpreting it through the long philosophical history of the term. It's emptying out of our interior contents and how is it happening? Well, I think we're moving from, in our technologies of information and visualization, we're moving toward more and more mimetic creation, which is surprising, because we would think that all these technologies are so far away from what we're doing in our everyday life. But at the same time, look at it. We had the typing machine, then we had the video camera, which really was just, and the images we take with our cameras are just metaphors of what we're experiencing in 3D, because they are, of course, overimposed on 2D, so they are different. And then now we are going into the VR, which is almost like our everyday experience of the space. And it doesn't require a lot of concretization on our part and a lot of input and intentionality on our part. We're reacting to something as though it was external. It's mimetic, yes? And what is it? I think we have to be very careful in how we treat and how we use those new technologies, lest they become a prosthetic for our old narratives. The narrative I think we have externalized here is that of our rationality. That's why I was asking you, Carla, what you think about rationality in this paradigm, because I believe that we have resigned from our rationality as one of those that are the causes and the guilty parties for a lot of harm in the world, yet we haven't really eliminated it. We have just externalized it. All of our technology is rationality embodied only on the outside of us. What's left inside might be some emotions, but they may be, oh, I didn't change this again, sorry. That are probably left on their own without the rationality. And I think what such projects as Opera Network are doing may be our help in not forgetting to keep our own stories within, so that we do not have to face them as an alien on the outside when they are externalized. Oh, thank you. That's it.
Okay. Mm. Mm. Yes. Yes.
So what were the underlying reasons that you need to understand that change in attitude? That was one thing. I have another question.
Okay. I'm not sure if I understood your question correctly, but if you're asking about how the Warsawers received that poem tree in order to make it familiar. Yes. Actually, it was a very long process, and it included a lot of debate, and there were many interpretations of the palm tree as a symbol. It was also interpreted, for example, as a symbol of the Polish in the new post-communist era suddenly having enough freedom and income to go to visit Egypt and Israel and exotic countries where they encountered the palm trees. That's why it's humorously also called Greetings from the Jerusalem Avenue, as though it was a we don't have it anymore, as though it was a postcard. Yes, so this was one of the approaches that the artist took to appeal to many different people. But of course, the official interpretation that was her inspiration for the monument was also debated, and I think it opened the eyes of many Warsawers to the experience I have narrated. That is my own experience in Warsaw, to the loss, to the things that used to be there and are no longer. So that's what happened, and people now just accept it as a symbol of that loss.
Sorry, my follow-up question is, because of the construct of monuments, that is why it is of interest, because I consider that a monument, for lack of a better way of putting it. And I believe that the same principles and constructs that are related to the moving from the foreign to familial are ones that could have multiple overlap and applications in different arenas. My follow-up question is, what is the, how do I put this? I forgot my question, so I'm gonna leave it at that. But I'll talk with you directly, Dr. Wagner.
I made
yes. Oh, let me put it another way. I found it again. The construct of AR and VR, is it expected to accelerate the adoption of foreign to familial, or is it to what is the representation? What is the importance of what it is to do to augment or to create a virtual reality? That's what I'm trying to understand. You understand of the physical. So when you add AR and VR, what is that actually bringing to the adoption of the external to familiar?
Well, I think that because VR experiences, although striving to become multisensorial, are at the same time always based mostly on vision and hearing, which are two senses of distance, they inevitably distance ourselves from these, I call them externalized and visualized internal experiences that we have. We can suddenly look at our memories as though they were somebody else's, or they were just there to encounter. And I believe that this always alienates us from those contents for a while. Then we can familiarize ourselves with them. But I think the first moment will always be alienating, if that answers your question. If I may go back to the first question, the palm tree was disruptive for the space at first.
first of all, it's not central at the roundabout, it's a bit to the side. But what it does, it's an excellent move by the artist, because if it were central, I think it wouldn't be drawing our attention to that space. Because it's disruptive, we have to, bounce against it. We have to think. And that's unrelated to the VR issue. It's just about how people had to really react to it, how they had to somehow familiarize with it themselves with it, because otherwise it would be always disruptive. So I think it's just instinct and self-preservation instinct is.
Thanks, Gladen, for the presentation. I hope I got your name right. So I had an inquiry about the role of academia in creating an element of the genius loci in terms of delivery, and what would you presume would be the effect of optimizing the same? Because I do feel like, for example, as we had the pandemic and we had to move into a system where we're doing virtual classes, that in academia there's a tendency of going back to being very rational and very stoic in terms of delivery. And there's that element of, how you describe the genius loci as an element of things that allow dynamism. So how do you think that would turn out if we're able to incorporate this in academia?
I'm not sure that I understand your question.
Okay. Is it possible to have the genius loci concept in academia?
In academia?
Yes.
In the method, or in the content, or in the subject of our study?
Delivery.
In the delivery?
Yes.
You mean in the form in which we deliver our results from study?
Yes.
I think the answer to that would be in some methodologies that our friends are proposing here, especially Elena, in conducting studies through artistic engagement. And if we can study the world through creative engagement with it, we can simply create such places that have a genius loci, I think your pronunciation is more ancient and more correct, that when people get into, they immediately can resonate with what the artists create, and that gives them both knowledge about the world, about the object of study, and the experience that doesn't trample our internal capacities to do an intentional relation, to carry out an intentional relation, although rational, with the external. One that brings, I'm speaking from the phenomenological point of view, that concretizes the space with our own experience without having to resign from it in order to study it. And I think that kind of study is the answer to that, perhaps. I don't know if I've answered the question. Yeah.
Right, thank you. Allow me to ask you a philosophical question. So the recent developments in artificial intelligence and VR have postulated that indeed we are not real. We are virtual, living in a virtual world, and nothing is real as it is. From your discussion about natural, virtual, and hybrid kind of environments, do you agree with these philosophers or scholars who argue that indeed this is not real? We are actually avatars who exist in a virtual world, and we'll go back to the avatar's tuition at some point.
Yes. Yeah. It is a good question, and yes, it's very difficult to defend the term natural these days, and that's why I said it's a very simplistic division, only created by differentiation the two terms. If we treat everything as mixed. We can't even talk about virtual anymore or mixed, because then everything is universal. So I'm just using it in a sort of logical, conceptual sense to give a model with which we can try differentiating different phenomena. But of course, yes, your point is really pertinent, I think. It's very difficult to define ourselves without our cell phones, as someone mentioned in the beginning. Yes.
Okay, let me thank once again Bogna for her talk. This applause goes to all speakers from the morning session. We will meet again after a lunch break. We're supposed to meet here at 2 p.m. So take your time, enjoy your meal, but please do return.
Zakira Muhammad yuko mbioni